right, finally going to get started on these figures, both the figure for the Jeep and then the figure for the M1 Abrams tank. And I blew up the instructions here and kind of went through and wrote down all the colors that I need. So I have all of those there, as well as those flesh tones. So I've got all the paints ready, and then I also have this wet palette. Because the technique that I'm going to be using is called glazing, and basically what you're doing is laying a very light coat over the pre-shaded figure, and that kind of takes a while, and you also need to thin it like 90%. So there's several videos out there to talk about this technique, and they recommend using this a wet palette to keep your paints wet once they're highly diluted, because they tend to evaporate very quickly. So I got this Stay Wet palette and went through the instructions, and basically what it is there's a sponge underneath there, and then this is like parchment paper, and there's videos out there how you can make your own. So basically all it is a sponge and parchment paper, and let's see if you can see it. When you push down on it, if I can get the reflection, a little, almost like a little puddle comes up. So when you put the paint on there, it sucks up or wicks up the moisture from below to keep the paint wet, and then you can thin it down, and I'll show how I do it. Also have some new brushes. I just want to start with some brand new brushes. I think in a previous video I showed where I shot these with the white from above. I also then went over both of them with a satin, which will provide the finish. So then that super thinned paint will then adhere better. The other thing I have is distilled water. So have it here with a dropper to then add a drop from time to time, along with the drop of paint, to then mix them together. I also used it, and I poured it in here to wet the sponge and everything. But they said, you know, if the contaminants in tap water, after a while you could get a mildewy smell. But if you stick with the distilled water, it kind of, you know, eliminates or lowers the chances of that. I think I'm just going to work my way from the bottom up. Flat brown, red brown, but instead of flat brown, I guess I'm going to use the red brown, and his feet are going to be down in the tank anyway, so it doesn't matter, but it's a good place to start. Now you can thin this with either water or thinner. I am going to try a drop of both. Paper towel close by. I'm actually going to wet half of this. Okay, so apparently the idea is to mix this down to get it to be like 90% thinned. And the fear with the water with the Tamiya paint, and I see it happening already, is that the paint separates, which apparently doesn't necessarily happen with the Vallejo, but we'll see when we get there. So that's why I want to try this thinner. All right, and basically what you're doing, it's called glazing. It's not a wash. You don't want it to build up. You just want the pigment to go down, but the shading to show through. And then it has to dry in between each coat. See, and it's pooling there, and that's not what you want to happen. And you know, you're slowly building it up. And then I'm just blowing it to dry it. All right, I think it works. We'll see. So I'm gonna work my way up. So that's the boots on one guy done. So on these, he has these uppers, I forget what they're called, but those are khaki. It's just this lower part here that is boot. So I want to stick with that. Okay, so there's the boots on both these guys. yeah, I think that effect works. So you can see back there, you know, it's darker obviously, and then up on the top, it's lighter. So, you know, we'll see. I'm just gonna, like I said, work my way up and see how it goes. But, you know, so far so good. And, you know, you do come back and touch up the highlights. And now we'll go to the next color and work our way up. I'll start with his pants and his shirt. Looks like that's dark green 1, khaki 1. So dark green, khaki 1 to 1. So I'll get to mix some colors, and then his belt is khaki, and this guy's, you know, uppers here, whatever they're called, are khakis. His pants are flat earth. Okay. And his jacket is dark yellow, and then I gotta assume his shirt in there is also the flat earth. Now this, I am just going to use the water. And the khaki over here. Ooh. See, this is model color, whereas this is that model air, and I think they're different. Again, I'm a novice when it comes to the Vallejo. I'm still learning. On this guy, I've got the dark green on the pants and the shirt, and then the khaki in the middle. Might give him, come back and touch him up one more time. And then on this figure, got the brown on the boots, the khaki on the uppers, the flat earth on the pants, and the dark yellow on the jacket. So yeah, I guess it's working. Not 100% sure, but again, this is the third out of, I believe it's 6 steps, so we're getting there. All right, here's the Jeep figure. All the paints are done now. I think I'm going to give these a coat of gloss, and then come back and do the washes. And then here's the tank commander figure, and yeah, I think it's looking pretty good with the shading. I used a couple of different facial tones there, flesh tones, and tried to follow, you know, some of these instructions about where to shade and stuff like that. And I actually think this guy's face came out a little bit better. It's easier to see it. Luckily, the other guy's face is a little more in the shade, which is kind of a good thing. But yeah, I think that technique works. I don't know if I executed quite good enough, but some of my layers were a little thick. But, you know, so far so good. FYI, I made this video prior to the terrible news about the model works, but I'm going to proceed with it in hopes for a better future for Charlie, Mac, and Susan. And again, I'm so sorry about the flooding, and hopes and prayers for quick recovery. Got an awesome card from an awesome pillar of the community, Charlie Mack and his wife Susan. And I believe Susan makes these cards. I remember last year there was one with a stencil of a Christmas tree with like mountains embedded in it. It was awesome, as is this one. Very cool. And thank you so much, Charlie. And speaking of Charlie Mack, he was talking about hosting a World War II, another World War II. The last one he did, I actually went through my stash and sorted everything, put all my World War II over here in this shelving bin, and actually for several of them went through the instructions to see what years they were. So just waiting for Charlie to announce those parameters, and I have a lot to choose from. So definitely looking forward to that. So again, thanks so much for the card, Charlie. It's going to go up with all the other ones. So Another mail call here, and another Christmas card. This one from the Flying Dutchman, Dutch Dave's modeling bench, and that's all the way from the Netherlands, and that is a gorgeous card. I'm gonna show this. It's morning after a snowfall at Koshikawa, and from a series of 36 views of Mount Fuji, probably 1832. Very cool card. Again, all the way from the Netherlands, so thank you so much, Dave. And then we have a shop card from Kyle at RKD Scaleworks. Awesome card, showing some of his work on the front there. And thank you for the kind words, Kyle. He mentioned that my tank build brought him to my channel because he hasn't built one yet. Kyle, go for it. So definitely go check out Kyle's channel. You can see some of the awesome work that he does there. Thanks again, Kyle, for the card. So there we go. We've got Kyle's card, coincidentally right above Dave's. And I also put Vinny's up from the last video. And I also put Rick Turk's other Christmas card up there. So the shop card wall is getting taller. And again, thanks Kyle and Dave. So there we go with a gloss coat. And yeah, I think washes are really gonna make these pop. I did the pin line washes with the brown and the black. I did the brown first to get like, you know, the big folds, and then came back with the black with a very fine brush, and then kind of, you know, did everywhere. And yeah, I think it gave it a pretty nice effect. It's shaded, you know, kind of in the eye sockets and the mouth, and that little like cleft, I think it's called, underneath the chin. Those faces look, you know, pretty good. I'm pretty happy. So now, going back to some of my old airplane techniques, give those a shot of dull coat and see how that goes. Oh, the other thing is, and I've seen it in another diagramma, that guy's hand, I think he's like, you know, holding a cigarette with his two fingers like that. So I think what I may do is drill a little hole between those two fingers and make a cigarette. We just got done with that dull coat, and that's pretty much the finished product. So again, his arm is just sticky tacked on there. So when I put that on the Jeep, I'll put that on the steering wheel. Then I also want to do something. I think the windshield is just too pristine, and I've seen some other modelers, you know, dirty it up and then like make a path for the windshield wipers, where they wiped away, you know, the mud or what have you. So I think I'm going to attempt that, you know, and then once the figure's in there, if any, you know, weathering to blend the two together needs to happen. Through the teeny tiny spares and found a very small little cylinder and drilled that out and stuck it in between his fingers there, and then just touched my paintbrush into the gray and then the black, and gave it a look of like ashes and you know, being lit. So smoke them if you got them. There we go, he's in there, and sure enough, as I was I put him in there and I was pulling away. I finally got him where I want him, and I touched it with the glue, and then I was pulling my hand away, boom, knocked that off. When I went to put the side view mirror back on, I put that back on, but no matter how much I farted around with it, I could still see it. All the way around, just muddied everything up. Kind of put the pigment on here, and just kind of went around, buffed everything. And then what I did is took a clean swab, and if you can see it there, I'll put it on a turntable in a minute, but then just like cleaned where those wipers would go. So I like that, how that looks. Might touch that up a little bit more. And it actually went all the way around again with the pigments. So I will put it on the turntable and close out this build. Without a doubt, the Jeep Willys MB holds an esteemed place in all of automotive history. From the outset of World War II, Germany had achieved outstanding success using motorized troops with their blitzkrieg tactics. It became a pressing need for the Allies to have a tough and reliable vehicle with excellent cross-country ability. The U.S. Army asked private industry to submit designs for a light go-anywhere field car. Designed in 1940 by Carl K. Probst of the American Bantam Car Company, about 70 Bantam reconnaissance cars were built and tested by the Army during 1940 and 41. However, in November 1941, the small Bantam company did not have significant production capacity to fulfill the tremendous demand. Thus, the vast majority of Jeeps produced during the war were built by the larger Willys Overland and Ford auto companies, with blueprint alterations replacing the hand-welded slat-type front grille with a simple pressed steel front grille to facilitate mass production. It was designated the GPW as a light utility cargo/personnel carrier, and soon the name Jeep became associated with the vehicle. Employed by all branches of the U.S. military as well as that of our allies, the Willys MB and Ford GPW ran over every battlefield in the war. As a means of transit for soldiers, it played an important role in bringing the Allied victory. The Jeep also proved successful in dozens of other roles, such as staff and scout car, mounted machine gun or self-propelled rocket launcher platform, small artillery towing vehicle, an ambulance carrying up to 4 wounded plus a driver, radio carrier/liaison command communication center, forward observation post, military police car, and even as a locomotive towing supply wagons on narrow gauge railway tracks. Production reached approximately 640,000 units by August of 1945. All right, there's the Jeep and the new armor section of my model shelves, along with the tank, which I'll do a separate video on. So yeah, just thoroughly enjoyed this build. And I want to thank Jared B. Models for the model itself. And I want to thank Markus at Scale Bench Plastic Models and Joachim at Jurama Models for hosting the Wheeled Vehicles and Military Use group build. Just a really unique group build and had a blast, and thanks for hosting, guys. And before I close, just again, thoughts and prayers and good wishes. And Charlie, if you need anything, let us know. You got a whole community behind you out here. But hope everything turns out well and the model works. So with that, once again, thanks for watching. Happy modeling. And if I don't see you before then, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.